So now that we've coded up the login and the register screens and our logout button is also functioning, it's time to look at our last view controller, and that's of course the chat view controller. So the most prominent component of this chat view controller, and this is the first time that we're seeing this and using this component. So let's talk a little bit about it. Essentially, a table view is simply just a view that's souped up, and it's able to display a number of cells one after the other, and it can scroll vertically. So the name table view is a bit of a misnomer because normally we associate tables with both having rows as well as columns. But in this case, in iOS, when we're talking about table views, all we're talking about is these lists that only have rows. In iOS, table views are absolutely everywhere. They're used in messages, in mail, and even if you look into your settings on your iPhone, you can see that this is also a table view. So as we mentioned, each of these are cells in the table view, and you can have various sections that group different cells together that have similar functionality. So we're going to use the table view to display all of the messages that get passed back and forth in our chat application. So in order to do that, we've embedded a table view inside this chat view controller. So you can see that this chat view controller is actually divided into a number of sections. Right at the top, we've got the status bar that you'll see in most apps. It shows your carrier status, your Wi-Fi status, etc. Now you can disable this and get rid of it, and we've shown you how to do that in the past, but we're going to keep it in this case. Now the next thing that you see is the navigation bar, and that of course comes for free when we embed our view controller stack inside a navigation controller. So that gives you the navigation options of going back and forth, gives you a title to your navigation bar, and also has bar items that you can drag and drop in here, like buttons, for example. Now, the next part of our app is, of course, the table view. And this, as you can see on our interface builder, takes up most of the space in our view controller. But it does not fill up the entire screen, because at the bottom, we've also got a bit of view here that contains a text field where the user can type in a message and has a send button so they can send it off. So essentially our chat view controller has a table view embedded inside. And when you create a new table view, all you have to do is just search for table view, and you can either drag on an entire table view controller, i.e. that entire screen is going to be dedicated to the table view, or you can actually embed a table view inside another view controller so that it takes up maybe half the space or 3/4 of the space. Now we've already done the design for you, and we've placed this table view inside our chat view controller and added in all the constraints. So now all we have to do is go ahead and set it up inside our chat view controller.swift file. Now the first thing that you have to do in order to use a table view controller is you're going to have to adopt some protocols. Now there's only two protocols, and they are UI table view delegate and UI table view data source. Now what that means is that you're saying that this chat view controller, this class, is going to be the delegate of the table view. That means that when some action happens in the table view, like a cell got clicked or the table view got swiped, then the one that gets notified, the delegate, is the chat view controller. So the chat view controller is going to handle all the things that happen in the table view. And the second protocol that we adopted is UI table view data source. And all that means is that the chat view controller is going to be responsible for serving up the data that's going to be displayed in the table view. So if you remember from our delegates and protocol classes in the Klima app, in order to set a class as the delegate, not only do you have to adopt the protocols at the class declaration line up here, but you also have to set yourself or the class as the delegate and data source inside ViewDidLoad. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. Now the table view that we've got here is linked up to an IP outlet called message table view. And that's going to be the property that we're going to use in order to tap into this particular table view that we've got on screen. So let's go ahead and set the chat view controller class as the data source and the delegate of the message table view. So we're going to tap into the message table view, we're going to tap into its delegate property, and it's going to be set to equal self. And the other property that we want to set is, of course, the data source property. And it's also going to be set as self, or the chat view controller. So once that's done, the next thing to address is this error here. And if you look inside the error pane, you can see that it tells us why we're getting this error. And it says that chat view controller does not conform to the table view data source protocol. And the reason for that is because the table view data source protocol has two required methods. One is called number of rows in section, and another one is called self a row at index path. So we have to go ahead and add those required methods before we can legally adopt ourselves, i.e. the chat view controller, as the UI table views data source. You can't be the data source if you're not going to provide any data. So let's go ahead and do that. So under the pragma mark where you see table view data source methods, we're going to address the first to do here, and we're going to declare the self a row at index path method. Now, of course, if you like typing, you can go and write override, function, table view, blah, blah, blah. But as we know, Swift has really good search functionality, so let's just go and search for it. Let's see what happens when we just start typing cell for row at. Well, it's already identified the method that we want. So let's go ahead and hit enter and get Xcode to type in all of that code for us. And this is basically the part that gets triggered when the table view looks to find something to display in the table view. So when you look at the table view in Interface Builder, you can see that we've got all of these prototype cells. Now, table views are very efficient, and essentially the way that it works is that it only loads up the number of cells that are necessary to fill the screen. So in this case, that's 8 cells. Now, when you decide to scroll and look at the next cell, what happens is that all the cells move up, and the cell that's just moved off screen, so that's cell 1, actually gets brought down to the bottom and becomes the next cell. So when you scroll, you see cell 10 appear, but it's actually a cell that we've reused. So if you have a table with 100 items, you don't end up loading up all 100 items and end up using up all the memory in your phone, but instead we're reusing about 8 or 9 cells each time. And whenever we swipe up or we swipe down, the cells get reused and gets populated with new data. So inside this method is where we are going to provide the cells that are going to be displayed in the table view. And in our case, we don't actually want to use the bog standard default cells that Xcode provides, because they're essentially just white cells with black text and some gray separators. And that's pretty boring. We want to style up our Messenger app so that it looks a little bit nicer. So in order to do that, we've created a custom cell. So if you have a look inside the view folder and then the custom cell folder, you can see that we've created a new zip file or a new design file. And in here, this is a cell that has an image view that's going to show the profile photo of the person who sent the message. Then we've got this little highlighted box that's going to contain the message as well as the email of the user who sent it. And we've given this message cell an identifier, and this is going to be crucial when we want to refer to it in our code inside Chat View Controller. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy it. Now this zip file or this design file is linked up to a class called Custom Message Cell, which is also a new class that we created. And this class manages what should get displayed in each of these places. So we have a message background. That's a UI view. We have something called avatar image view, which is an image view. And then we've got a message body and a sender username. So this is the class that we're going to use to tap into each of these areas and display some information in each of our messages. So if you head back over to the chatviewcontroller.swift, we're going to create our cell in here. And the cell is going to be created using a table view method called DQ reusable cell with identifier. So the identifier is going to be what we copied from earlier on, the identifier of the custom cell, and it's called custom message cell. And the index path is just going to be set as index path. And that refers to the location of the cell that we're initializing. So the index path contains properties such as row and sections, and it specifies for the cell at row 1 what should get displayed, for the cell at section 2, row 3 what should get displayed, etc. It's just a location identifier for each of these cells. And the last thing that we have to do, because we're using a custom cell, is we have to specify the class of the custom cell. So if you remember, that class was called custom message cell, so that our compiler knows that this cell object is an object of type custom message cell, so that we'll be able to tap into each of those properties in the custom message cell, like avatar image view or message body, etc. So when our table view loads up, it's going to call this method, and it's going to ask the data source, which we've set as the chat view controller. It's going to ask the chat view controller to divvy up the data that it should display in each of the cells. And the message that gets sent is what should be the cell that I should display at this row, and we give it a